Welcome to Unit 3, where we are discussing finding and choosing a volunteer job for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. There are many things to consider, but first of all, we want to keep in mind that an ideal volunteer job for a person with intellectual disabilities is mutually beneficial. We want to make sure that neither party is taking advantage of the other. While it is important to help nonprofit organizations and local charities by volunteering, our program's first priority is making sure that the volunteers' needs are being met. So for example, sometimes a volunteer location will have no work available, but they will want to be kind and help a participant who comes in inquiring about opportunities. And so they will create a job just for them. And often this is not an important job. It's not something that would be done otherwise. It doesn't really benefit the volunteer location in a meaningful way. Again, so it may be beneficial in some way for the volunteer, but it is not helping the volunteer location. And then, of course, the opposite problem can occur when a volunteer location may accept help from one of our clients for free when they normally would pay someone to do that job. And in this case, that would be exploitative, and our volunteers are not allowed to work, to volunteer at a location where someone might be getting paid to do the same thing, because we want to ensure that they are not being taken advantage of. Some other things to consider, and we talked about this in Unit 2, is always remember to ask, why do you want to volunteer? Throughout the process, it's good to go back and check with your volunteer, with the program participant, about this, because it will help you understand more the root of what they want to do and what they like, and will help you more accurately assess them and find an ideal volunteer location. So, there are many questions. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It's just kind of to give you an idea of how many things and what kinds of things you should keep in mind when you are considering a volunteer location. First of all, of course, we want to ask, when we are assessing a volunteer location, keep in mind this is after what we talked about in Unit 2, where we've already assessed the volunteer, we've discussed possible options, and now we are actually choosing a volunteer location. So first of all, we have to ask, is the job what the volunteer wants? Does it fit with what they said they wanted to pursue? For example, someone says they want to wash fire trucks. Are we pursuing volunteer locations that are fire stations or something similar? We want to make sure that we are always focused on what the volunteer wants. Are the tasks appropriate? Are they things that the volunteer can do? Are they things that they want to do with a reasonable amount of support? Does it align well with personal goals? In our program, we have progress notes that have to be completed daily, and we have each individual may have 3 or 4 goals. We want to make sure that the job aligns with those, and also ISP outcomes. Everything needs to tie back to those to ensure that we are serving the volunteers as well as we can, and also keeping with state regulations. Another question is the time requirement appropriate for the volunteer's abilities? Is the volunteer able to sit and do a task that may require 2 hours? Is their attention span appropriate? Will they need bathroom breaks, or will they need to leave for meds or something like that? So we want to make sure that the time requirement is appropriate and doable. And also, does the time requirement fit into the volunteer's schedule? If they volunteer at another location, will they be able to get there in time, or will they be able to get home or wherever they get dropped off in time? Will they be able to fit lunch into their schedule around that job? Also, is transportation available? For our participants who use wheelchairs, we need to make sure that a van is available, especially for locations that are far away. And furthermore, still talking about people with wheelchairs, is the job location accessible? Does it have a wheelchair ramp? Are the bathroom facilities large enough to maneuver a wheelchair in, etc.? Is the job site near bathrooms? Things like that. Are there any sensory concerns? This would be particularly for participants who are on the autism spectrum. Although there are some other participants who may have sensory issues. So noise levels, are there too many people? Is it crowded? What about strong odors? Things like that. Bright lights. These are all things we need to consider for our clients with sensory concerns. Kind of going along with that, are there any concerns about working with other people? Does your volunteer want to work by themselves or with people? And does this job location have other people you're going to work closely with? Do other volunteers from our program go? Do they get along with those volunteers, etc.? These are all things to consider. Does the location supervisor understand what is involved? This means that you have accurately represented the volunteer and made sure that the volunteers, the location supervisor, is on board with what you need to do and is aware of the abilities of your volunteer, and also understands what our program is about and what our priorities are. And again, that question comes up, is it mutually beneficial? So this job location must be beneficial both for the actual job location, must be accomplishing something for them that needs to be done, and also is it fit and is it beneficial for your volunteer? Some more practical questions about scheduling and things like, will the volunteer be able to take days off? And how do you communicate this? For example, some people volunteer with Meals on Wheels, and if the participant takes a day off from the program, we need to find a suitable replacement, or a staff will need to cover that route themselves to make sure that people don't go without their meals. It's not just a job that you can just call and be like, I'm not going to be there today. Other things to consider, are there any clearances, background checks, certifications like CPR, first aid, are any of these things required for the volunteer location? And you want to make sure you consider for the volunteer and for you, for program staff. Do you have the appropriate clearances? A lot of places require just the background check, fingerprinting, sometimes the child abuse history clearance, things like that. Or even some locations, like some senior centers and things like that, require you to pass their training before they will let you volunteer there. So these are things you need to keep in mind both for you and for the volunteer. Another question of scheduling is, who will transport and accompany the volunteer if you take a day off? Will a person who subs with your volunteer be able to do the job and understand the job and function normally if you're not there? And this includes if a specific place requires a certain clearance that maybe a substitute staff does not have. All of these things are important and need to be considered. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. It is simply meant to show you there are many things to consider when looking at a potential volunteer location.